Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to run through some of the other poems in the poetry packet. So this is part two of the poetry packet video. And the second poem we have up is called Lying in a Hammock at William Duffy's Farm in Pine Island, Minnesota. And the poem is just about that, lying in a hammock. You know, those things that we kind of sleep in and we string between two trees at William Duffy's farm, that's somebody else's farm, and that might matter to us. And this is where it is, a place called Pine Island, Minnesota. So I'm just going to read it and say a couple quick things about it. He says, "Over my head I see the bronze butterfly asleep on the black trunk, blowing like a leaf in green shadow. Down the ravine, behind the empty house, the cowbells follow into the distances of the afternoon. To my right, in a field of sunlight between two pines, the droppings of last year's horses blaze up into golden stones. I lean back as evening darkens and comes on. A chicken hawk floats over, looking for home. I have wasted my life." So one thing I want you to keep in mind about this poem is most of it is just description, right? We're just describing where he is. He's in a hammock and this is what he sees. He sees a butterfly. I have a comment out here. Think about why he chose the color bronze. Think about that. And I want you to look at any other descriptions that we have here that we think about, wait, why is something described in that way, right? Um, why a green shadow? What does that mean? Think about what that says. He says, "Down the ravine," I say a ravine is a deep gorge. It's kind of like a ditch, except natural, is a ravine. And so it won't be as straight. Ditches are usually straight. But so it's kind of just kind of a narrow, a long, narrow hole in the ground. Why is the cowbells follow another? Cowbells are bells that cows wear, so you know where they are. Interesting. The cowbells follow one another. Think about what that says. Can a bell follow another bell? What's actually happening there? And so think about how he describes some of these things, right? The droppings of last year's horses. That's horse poop, right? How does he describe that? And how does that give us a sense of how we feel about this? So I'm going to leave this to you to begin to think about some of the surprising images, and you can discuss those in your discussion board. So anything's fair game for this because I haven't really discussed it. But you can potentially bring some of those issues up for the discussion board. The next poem I want to look at very briefly is a poem that, by the way, I found the MTA puts poems up in the subway. And this is a poem that the MTA had in the subway. I'm riding the subway, and I looked at the end and I said, "Oh, there's a poem there." And I liked it, and I think I took a picture of it and then found it. So I typed it out here. So it's called Notes on Longing. Longing is to want something that you don't have anymore. You long for something. If you long for a person, that person's not near you, and you want to be close to them. You long for a place. It's you're not, you long for home. If you're not at home, if you're missing home, you might say that you long for it. So this is Notes on Longing, and we think about what we might be longing for. And again, most of this is just description. Uh, it smells of after rain tonight. Duck bones, a wounded egg on rice. On the corner there is a shop that makes keys. Keys that open human doors. Doors that lead to rooms that hold families of 4 or 7 who sit at a table. There is a mother who brings sizzling flounder on a wide platter for the family whose ordinary mouths have been made to sing. And so again, a lot of this is just a description of where we are. The duck bones, a wounded egg on rice, just an egg. This is our food. We have duck, and why talk about a wounded egg? You can think about that. And what other elements do we see there? And it's really just thinking about a family is eating dinner. But the way that we describe it might make us feel differently about that. What is it that she might be doing? So think about some of those things that she's doing here. What does it mean to say that their ordinary mouths have been made to sing? How is that helping some of this? But think about that description that helps us think about where we are. You can potentially be talking about some of that. Um, I won't go through this poem in detail, the Latin Deli and Ars Poetica, but just let you know that this poem And Ars Poetica, by the way, is a poem about poetry, about what makes a good poem. And what's interesting about this is that this is a poem about, as it says, the Latin deli. It's like a bodega, specifically kind of a bodega that sells foods that are going to be that people who are from Latin America are going to appreciate, from Central and South America. We know these kinds of deli places in New York. We have places that specialize in Latin food. We have places that specialize in Caribbean food. We have places that specialize in, like Bangladeshi food or Indian food. We have all those different kinds of markets that you can go to that specialize in foods that come from somebody's home country. And so this is the Latin deli, a place where you're going to find those things. And again, I'll let you go through most of this on your own, and you can see the comments I have off to the right here. And if you're bring this up in the Word document, the one with the annotations, you'll be able to see all of this. But I think what I want you to keep in mind about this is, walking into basically a kind of a bodega, the most normal thing in the world to do in New York City, but to kind of think about what that place looks like. How is it that she is going to describe this in a way that allows us to see it with fresh eyes? So I'm going to just do the first part of it. Presiding over a Formica counter, plastic mother and child magnetized to the top of an ancient register, the heady mix of smells from the hanging in stalks like votive offerings. She is the patroness of exiles, a woman of no age who was never pretty, who spends her days selling canned memories. I'm just going to stop right there and just think about some of the things we had there. Formica is just that what counters are made of. There's kind of a plastic. I've got a note over here. There's kind of you've seen that countertop. But the plastic mother and child magnetized to the top of an ancient register. One of the things in poems recognize that the sentence goes on even when the line stops. So it says plastic mother and child magnetized to the top of an ancient register. That mother and child is going to be Mary and Jesus. So we've got that religious imagery in the store. You might have seen that in a store. Somebody might have a Jesus and Mary on top of the cash register. The heady just means rich, rich smells. The heady mix of smells from the open bins of dried codfish. Those of you who know that, that's bacalao, the dried fish. Going down to the Caribbean market down in Jamaica, down by the train station. Codfish, the plantains. Those of you who don't know, plantains are like a banana, except they're not as sweet, and you cook them, hanging in stalks. Talk about the woman in being, as it says, the patroness of exiles. That is like she's the patron saint of people who have been exiled from their home country. And so what we're doing here is just describing what it's like to be in this store. And I'll let you go through the rest of it on your own and think about maybe some of the images there. But that's mainly what she's describing there, is the importance of this store to the people who are away from their home countries, and why this becomes so important, and how it is that she's going to be describing this store in such a way, again, makes us feel like we're there, makes us feel like the people who are there, and how and why this store becomes so important to them. So you've got the annotations over here to the side, so you can look at that. But I'll let you go through the rest of that on your own. But again, it's a fairly simple, straightforward thing of just saying, I'm just describing what a store looks like, and then coming up with a larger meaning after that. The next one we have in here, two more by James Wright. We had the first one by James Wright, which was lying in a hammock in William Duffy's farm in Pine Island, Minnesota. And I've got two others here. I won't go through this in detail, but this, again, just off the highway to Rochester, Minnesota, twilight bounds softly forth on the grass, and the eyes of those two Indian ponies darkened with kindness. So here's just off the highway. Somebody is driving down an empty stretch of highway and sees two horses. And then we go through and talk about what it's like to go out and look at these horses. I want to think about the way in which Wright begins to describe what it's like to experience those horses and what that makes him feel like. He says down at the end, realizes that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom like a flower. And so what does that potentially mean? What does he want to say with that? But I'll let you go through yourself and see if there's anything in there about the way in which he describes this encounter with the horses that makes us feel as if we were there. And then the last one to look at, autumn begins in Martins Ferry, Ohio. So just autumn in this particular town. Um, and he says here, in the Stadium, I think of Polacks nursing long beers in Tiltonsville and graces of Negroes in the blast furnace at Benwood, and the ruptured night watchmen of Wheeling Steel dreaming of heroes. All the proud fathers are ashamed to go home. Their women cluck like starved pullets dying for love. Therefore, their sons grow suicidally beautiful at the beginning of October and gallop terribly against each other's bodies. So he's talking about he's in the football stadium. He's watching high school kids play football. There's the Shreve High football stadium, and so that's a very normal place. There, he's down here is where he's potentially talking about those students, those kids who are going to be playing football. But up here, he's thinking about those fathers, right? Nursing beers, long beers in Tiltonsville, the gray faces of Negroes in the blast furnace at Benwood. Wright writes a lot about coal mining country. Martins Ferry, Ohio, that part of Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, up around there, there's a lot of coal. And back when we mined a lot of coal and produced a lot of steel in the United States, you people were doing those jobs. Those are hard jobs, manual labor jobs. And he starts to think about what it means for them. Again, this says that they're dreaming of heroes. But let's think about how we describe them. The proud fathers are ashamed to go home. Their women cluck like starved pullets dying for love. Um, Pullets are a kind of a chicken, female chickens, and that's what he says that their wives are like. Um, and so thinking about these fathers and why it might be important for them to watch their sons play football, why it might be so meaningful to them to be able to do something like that. And so, but again, a lot of this is what's he's thinking of in the stadium, what he thinks about of the people of the lives of the fathers who are in the stadium watching their sons play football, and why this becomes something that's potentially so important to them. So again, think about some of those descriptions and how they give us a sense of place as well. So you've got all these, understand something about these poems, and now you can begin to write for your discussion boards, process some of those things. And again, we want to be learning from them. Think about what are the surprising things that these poets are doing in their poems, and how can we potentially do some of those surprising things ourselves when we are going to be writing our own poems. So you can discuss all that in your discussion board and then use some of those ideas when you actually begin to write your own poem.